tents just located in the desert, and we're not really sure whether Iraqis are actually living in these tents permanently or whether they are temporary.
We're not, although it appeared to us to be people who live off the land, who lived a very traditional lifestyle in the Arabian desert. Many of them had animals with them that they were herding. It looked like this was just a normal day for them, and they just saw, our trucks rolling through, our large convoy rolling through, still very curious about that. But then there were even some people along the route who just went about their business. They weren't even that concerned with what we were doing. I guess it's become old hat for them over the last couple of weeks, seeing large convoys of vehicles going by. They still have to provide food for themselves, and so they're doing their job. It seems largely unaffected by what's going on. You had children who came out and were waving to you, and they're often there with their parents and elderly people along the side of the road. It didn't feel like a war at that point. That said, we were on our way to an area where things are very serious, and that's why they're sending us here, why they're deploying Marines to this area, because of all these problems that they're running into, where it's a lot less friendly. Carol?
Understand. Jason Bellini reporting live from somewhere near Nasiriyah. We're going to take a quick break. Before we go, I want to tell you what we're going to do, though. There was a suicide bombing over the weekend in Israel, a so-called gift from Iraq. We'll get more into that right after this.
If you were born between 1918 and 1963, call the number on your screen now to find out more about the Silver Care Plan. The average funeral now costs over $6,000. But did you know your survivors may only be able to receive government death benefits up to $300 if they qualify? The Silver Care Plan is a way to help protect your loved ones. To get free information about the plan, just call the number on your screen.
The war in Iraq continues, and no one takes you closer than CNN, live throughout the day. Stay with CNN, the most trusted name in news. Diagnosis: cancer.
I was given a 1% chance of survival. That pretty much stamps out any hope.
Pack it up, write your will, take your last vacation.
I broke down for about 15 minutes. I just couldn't stop crying.
And then I would find a commercial for Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and my life changed.
There's always hope, that there's no cancer that hasn't been survived by someone.
It is never too late. As long as we're breathing, it's not too late to seek another opinion.
I cannot imagine raising my son without him. And if we had not gone to the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, I really don't think that we would have him here today.
With world-class medical technologies and innovative complementary therapies, Cancer Treatment Centers of America have treatment options you may not even know exist. You can call our cancer information specialists 24 hours a day to learn about your options. Please call.
They give you a new lease on life. It's worth everything.
CNN, the most trusted name in news.
I want to take a few minutes here to shift our focus from the war in Iraq to another conflict in the region, to Israel, where 3 weeks of silence has been shattered by a suicide bombing at an open-air cafe. It happened in Netanya, and that's where our Kelly Wallace filed this report.
Outside the London Cafe in Netanya, a suicide bomber shatters the quiet inside Israel since the start of the Iraq War. This man was walking by when he heard an explosion.
Then it was big bomb, and many soldiers here. 2 soldiers was down here. Many blood, many people skip from here. Big paranoia.
Police say a man blew himself up outside the indoor-outdoor cafe, injuring dozens of Israelis, including 10 off-duty soldiers. All were enjoying lunch on a beautiful spring day. Some in Netanya saw a possible connection to the American and British invasion in nearby Iraq.
I don't know if it is simple. I didn't think about it till now, but you see, this is a London coffee, so who knows?
This man said he's sure the two are connected. Because they think that America is doing a job on our behalf, but that's not correct, he told us. The leader of the radical Palestinian group Islamic Jihad in Gaza claimed responsibility, saying the attack was also done in, quote, solidarity with the Iraqi people and their steadfastness against the attacks of the British and Americans who are serving the interest of Israel first and foremost. Only a few hours after the attack by the 20-year-old man from the West Bank town of Tulkarm, according to Islamic Jihad, an alert about a suspicious item. Police clear the area near the London cafe and use bomb detection equipment to determine this box was not an explosive. Netanya has been the site of many terrorist attacks, including the deadliest suicide bombing ever in Israel, almost exactly a year ago, when a man killed 29 Israelis sitting down for Passover dinner. Since the war in Iraq began, many Israelis have been waiting to see if Israel would be hit by an Iraqi missile. Instead, the country was hit with a familiar weapon. And now some Israelis worry more such attacks will take place, especially as the military campaign against Saddam Hussein continues. Kelly Wallace, CNN, Netanya, Israel.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. Before you go, I want to tell you what we're going to get into after the break. We'll have more on how coalition forces are treating Iraqi POWs. We'll be right back.
Today, information means everything. And only Time magazine brings you into the heart of what matters most. The people who change our world. The events that transform our lives. Diverse perspectives that turn information into insight. It's all inside Time. And now, a special offer for CNN viewers. Get this handheld organizer free with your paid subscription of 56 issues for just 99 cents an issue. Call now with your credit card and receive this handsome travel alarm clock absolutely free. You don't just read Time, you experience it. Learning more, understanding more. Use your credit card now. Get over 70% off the newsstand price. And the handheld organizer and the travel alarm clock are yours free. Time magazine, keeping you better informed. Call now.
.4:53 Eastern Time, more Iraqis have given up the fight. About 2 dozen surrendered near Najaf in the past several hours, and another dozen or so in northern Iraq this morning. The United States now has more than 4,000 Iraqi POWs. CNN's Ryan Chilcote is embedded with the 101st Airborne.
Hooded and tagged, Iraqi prisoners are transferred from one group of American soldiers to another. At least 27 of them surrendering to a long-range artillery unit near the city of Najaf in central Iraq, telling soldiers from the 101st Airborne that they'd been forced to fight for Saddam Fedayeen, a paramilitary group loyal to President Saddam Hussein.
Fedayeen are trying to compel forcefully local civilians to fight for the Iraqis. Kind of what we suspected. These guys flew for their life rather than fight U.S. forces.
A U.S. soldier uses a cheat sheet with Arabic phrases like, "be quiet." It is a strange mix of comfort and authority.
Part of just a security both for themselves and for us. So it's important to know that although it may look bad, they're being treated very, very well, actually. Each have their own bottles of water.
A small but important gesture. The Army's thinking is that the better the prisoners are treated, the better the chances that other Iraqis, having heard how these prisoners were treated, will also want to surrender. But for now, security is paramount and time is short. The Iraqis have since been transferred again, this time to the rear, where they will be questioned. Ryan Chilcote, CNN, with the 101st Airborne near Najaf, Iraq.
You might be wondering why those POWs' faces are covered. Well, Ryan explains the prisoners are masked as a security measure and used only briefly when they're moved from one military unit to the next. Right now, we want to bring you a very personal story from an Apache helicopter pilot. He's keeping a personal diary. Let's listen.
24 March 2003. Combat is as terrifying as I thought it would be. Even more, actually. My first experience came late last night and into this morning. I've seen the damage to some and heard of the damage to the rest of the aircraft in the battalion. Ours was the only one to come through the battle unscathed. Cindy and I can't believe it. After all the fire we went through, we could have walked on top of it. It was so thick. Talk about a crazy night. Everything seemed to be going as planned for the first 5 minutes or so. Then we fired our first shot, and the city erupted in gunfire all around us. Before we knew it, we were scattered and making evasive maneuvers. It was as if we'd stirred up a hornet's nest. We lost sight of each other and the ability to fight as a team. I thought my heart was going to pound free of my chest. The radios, all 4 of them, crackled with reports of guys taking fire, taking hits, making evasive maneuvers, trying to regroup and rally. We took fire again, and as crazy as it sounds, the flak from that 57mm S60 AAA was spectacular. The all lasted only momentarily as we broke down to cover again. All the while juking left and right to avoid fire. I brought the helicopter out of the pattern we were circling in and turned southwest. What was before us both terrified and amazed me. It was the very same area where Doug and Ron had been shot down and where many of the others had taken hits. With Cindy pointing out fire, I pulled in all the power I had to pull and drove the cyclic forward. Longbow 025 was blasting the leaves off of palm trees and the sand off of rooftops. Total time of 2.5 hours. All Reaper aircraft and crew were back safe. I pulled the power levers back to idle, and my right leg finally stopped shaking.
What about Paris?
Why not the Caribbean?
How can planning your next trip be even better?
Mexico?
Knowing your trip could be free.
Hawaii!
Yes!
Call now to request the City Advantage World MasterCard, and you can earn free award travel plus get 8,000 bonus miles. And you can use your miles to fly on over 25 top airlines. You'll earn 1 mile for every dollar you spend on everyday purchases and on special purchases too. Call to request your card and 8,000 bonus miles. Plus, now your miles never expire as long as you make a purchase with your card at least once every 3 years. Soon, you'll be on the trip you planned. Use your miles to fly on over 25 top airlines, stay at the finest hotels worldwide, and drive with any major car rental company free. Call now to request your City Advantage World MasterCard and 8,000 bonus miles, and your next trip to almost anywhere could be free.
I'm Bill Hemmer live in Kuwait City. It is Monday. Here in the headlines at this hour, U.S. Marines reportedly targeting the man known as Chemical Ali. Reuters correspondent Sean McGuire says Marines launched a dawn raid on the town of Shatra, southern Iraq, hoping to kill Iraqi guerrilla leaders. Among those targeted, Saddam Hussein's cousin Ali Hassan al-Majid. He's accused of directing the gassing of Kurdish villagers back in 1988. Al-Majid is in charge of the southern front in Iraq. A CNN correspondent in northern Iraq report coalition bombing of Iraqi positions in the north has picked up considerably in the recent days. This is the 4th straight day that bombs have been dropped on the town of Mosul. Also, British commanders in southern Iraq have seized huge caches of Iraqi weapons and ammunition. They also captured 5 Iraqi paramilitary leaders after what's described as a ferocious gun battle early Sunday on the outskirts of Basra. The British forces systematically said to be going through the area, engaging and destroying Iraqi defenses as they find them. U.S. military officials say the crash of a Marine Corps helicopter appears to be an accident, not the result of combat. The UH-1 Huey went down in southern Iraq, and Central Command confirms that 3 fatalities and 1 injury have occurred as a result. A suspected terrorist facility, the remote mountains along Iraq's border with Iran, targeted by airstrikes this weekend. U.S. forces now on the ground there, and Joint Chiefs Chairman General Richard Meyer says the site was believed to be the source of toxic ricin
intended for a terror attack in London that was foiled.
Occurred near a suicide bomber, the site where the suicide bomber killed 4 soldiers Saturday at a checkpoint. Central Command says today's encounter was tragic, but the U.S. troops did the right thing. Reuters reports another deadly checkpoint shooting took place hours later, this one near the southern town of Shatra. U.S. Marines say they killed an unarmed Iraqi man who was speeding in a pickup truck toward a checkup point. A passenger in the truck was badly wounded. 4 U.S. Marines who had been listing as missing are now confirmed killed in action. Central Command says their M101 Abrams tank went off of a bridge in Nasiriyah last Tuesday when its driver was shot. The other 3 crewmen drowned in the tank. The tank and the crew were recovered from the Euphrates River on Sunday. 2 Navy airmen were plucked safely from the Persian Gulf when their S-3B Viking refueling aircraft went over the side of the USS Constellation. That plane was landing when it suddenly veered off the edge of the flight deck. The crew ejected and was picked up moments later by a rescue helicopter. Both are okay. U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell will be in Ankara, Turkey this week. He said it's one of a series of trips that will focus on rebuilding Iraq after the war. Powell will also meet with NATO allies in Brussels. Japan is keeping a wary eye on North Korea with the help of 2 new satellites that watch for ballistic missiles. Early today, North Korea tested a short-range anti-ship missile. Japan's defense agency concluded the missile was not ballistic and did not pose a risk to Japan. We are bringing you various angles on the war in Iraq. Coming up this hour, the heat is on. We're going to discuss keeping the troops cool despite heavy gear and chemical protection suits. Plus, a fearsome fake army. We'll take you on a nighttime mission to show you how psychological operations, or PSYOPs as they're also known, wage war on the Iraqis. And the game goes on as the baseball season opens. We're going to look at the history of America's favorite pastime during wartime. And good morning. It is Tuesday, April 1st. I'm Darren Kagan in Kuwait City.
And a good morning, Darren. Good morning, everyone. From CNN's global headquarters in Atlanta, I'm Anderson Cooper. You are looking on the left-hand side of your screen, a live picture outside of Basra, the bridge crossing into the city as the day is underway there. We will continue to monitor developments in Basra as we have since this conflict began. There is a lot going on in the battle for Basra. It is 4 a.m. here on the East Coast. Let's give you a visual sense right now of where coalition forces are in Iraq, as close as we can tell you. As we put this map into motion, you'll see coalition ground forces are about 50 miles south of Baghdad. Throughout that entire area, Iraqi Republican Guard units are being pounded by coalition air attacks. And in the north, Iraqi forces are also being hit by airstrikes. That is while key ground battles are still underway in cities throughout Iraq, Najaf, Nasiriyah, elsewhere. Some of the fiercest fighting has been around Najaf, but the U.S. Army's 101st Airborne Division has seized an airfield on the outskirts of the town without a fight. Moving north to Mosul, here's a look at the damage on a ridge where Iraqi troops have been entrenched. The Kurdish militia say about 1,000 Iraqi soldiers have surrendered along the border, separating Kurdish areas and those controlled by the Iraqi regime. Arun Ben-Wieneman spoke to a handful of Iraqi POWs in Kurdish-controlled territory. And you know that sound well by now. That is the sound of battle in Basra. British forces there secured the western part of the city, but they say in other parts of the city, Iraqi paramilitary forces are randomly firing mortar shells. For an update now on the latest, we're going to go to our own Tom and Tier at Central Command in Doha, Qatar, for the latest on that checkpoint shooting. Tom?
Anderson, in the last half hour, a senior Centcom official confirmed to CNN that they're going to be using psychological operations to inform the Iraqi people of the dangers of the battlefield, the checkpoint, being pushed forward by elements of Saddam Hussein's regime. They say a message is being prepared and will be dropped in leaflets over southern Iraq very soon. As you reported earlier, a checkpoint incident overnight resulted in the death of 7 civilians when their vehicle failed to stop. Also, Centcom says there is a concern that there may be remote-controlled detonation of vehicles, that vehicles packed with explosives, people behind the wheel ordered to drive them up to checkpoints and then detonated remotely. The technology, they say, does exist. But we did hear very early on this morning from Centcom's Director of Strategic Communications, Jim Wilkinson, about this unfortunate incident where 7 civilians were killed when they drove into a checkpoint at a high rate of speed.
This is a sad and tragic incident, and it is really terrible that innocent people have died. I will point out that this is a byproduct. The new security measures we've had to put in place are a byproduct of the regime's tactics of terrorism. They have now called for terrorist attacks both in the United States and the United Kingdom. They continue to, as the report said just before, they continue to attack their own citizens who try to flee. And so it's a sad and tragic incident. But it's unfortunate that it had to happen. But all such incidents like this are the fault of the regime.
Also, CENTCOM officials blame the regime for offering a reward for a suicide bomber, providing the family of that person who detonated in the 3rd Infantry Division the equivalent of about $35,000 and a posthumous promotion. So there is a great deal of concern here. Whether they've changed the rules of engagement or operational procedures is up to question, but it does seem that the procedures at checkpoints have changed dramatically since a suicide bomber detonated his vehicle outside the 3rd Infantry Division checkpoint on Highway 9. Now they are ordering these vehicles to stand off, people to get out of the vehicles and check them out from a distance rather than from up close. Anderson, back to you.
All right, Tom Mantier, live Doha, Qatar. Thanks very much, Tom. In a few hours, as Tom mentioned, at 7 a.m. Eastern, we're going to have live coverage of that briefing from Central Command, 7 a.m. Eastern Time. Let's go to Darren Kagan in Kuwait City. Darren?
Yeah, Anderson, let's go ahead and get more on that checkpoint. We're going to bring in Reem Brahimi. She is in Amman, Jordan, and Reem hopefully can bring us some Arab reaction to the deadly checkpoint shooting. Reem, hello.
Hello to you, Darren. Well, interestingly enough, I can tell you that it hasn't made the main Arab newspapers. That event doesn't seem to be in any of the headlines of today's newspapers. It wasn't either in the headlines of the broadcast of Al Jazeera television. Now, it's typically the kind of event that would trigger a lot of high emotions in the region, and it's typically the kind of event that people are worried will happen more and more. But in terms of media coverage, so far we haven't seen a big splash on it for the moment. It could be that it didn't make it, that the event wasn't actually, well, happened actually too late for the newspapers to make it, but there is a question over why the broadcasters aren't leading with that as a top story at the moment. Of course, as you know, Darren, a lot of other things happening in Baghdad, a lot of targeting of Republican Guard facilities, of intelligence facilities, presidential palaces. There was a lot of smoke in Baghdad earlier this morning, and residents will have woken up after a night of intensive bombing, 5 huge explosions overnight. If we're to believe the Pentagon, in the past 3 days, 3,000 precision-guided munitions have been dropped over the Iraqi capital. Now, I just spoke to some people who've just come out from Baghdad. They say Iraqi civilians are trying to to sort of lead their life as they can under the circumstances, and as soon as the bombing stops, well, they go out and try and buy food and go about their daily business, despite the difference of circumstances, of course. Darren?
Reem, let me just jump in here. Our time's a little bit short here. I want to ask you one thing that I know has made the media, because I've seen it here on Arab television here in Kuwait, is this new video of Saddam Hussein and his sons. What kind of coverage is that getting in Jordan, and what do you make of the release of that video?
Well, that's a very interesting release of a new, we can call it the latest release of the President Saddam Hussein tape in a way. It has made Al Jazeera, it's been in a lot of the Arab newscasts, definitely. Definitely a sign, again, not only for the international community there, but also for the Iraqi people. President Saddam Hussein, hours after the domestic TV channel was knocked off air, the TV comes back on air with this picture of President Saddam Hussein, both his sons, Uday and Qusay Saddam Hussein, the Minister of Defense and the Minister of Military Industrialization. This at a moment when there were a lot of questions over the sons may have fled in another country, even in the region. A lot of rumors abounding about whether or not Saddam Hussein's family was still in Iraq. So as if to answer those rumors, the president coming up on TV, and it's been broadcast on Arabic channels, way of saying that they're still in charge, if you will. Darren?
That would be the Iraqi response. I guess we'd also have to have some kind of verification ream of when exactly that tape was done. Reem Brahimi and Amman Jordan, thank you. Anderson, you take it from here.
Darren, thanks very much. We have been following a lot of reports from U.S. military officials about Republican Guard units shifting from positions in the north further south, trying to in preparing some sort of a defense of the city of Baghdad. I want to check in with our own Walter Rogers, who's with the 7th Cavalry, where last time we talked with him, the troops he was with were in a meeting preparing for some sort of action of their own. Walter, what's the latest where you are?
Hello, Anderson. Well, as we're out here in the Iraqi desert, probably 50 or 60 miles south of Baghdad, I think what we're going to see in the coming days and weeks is a shift in the focus on the land war. The end game has always been Baghdad, and I strongly suspect that what you're going to see is a shift in the focus in the land war, concentrating more and more on Baghdad. The reason we say this, of course, is because behind us to the south, more and more troops are pouring in. These troops coming from the 4th Infantry Division. That means the 3rd Infantry Division is going to be strongly reinforced. The original land war, of course, focused in the southeast at Basra, and then up to Al-Nasiriyah, and then Al-Samawa and An-Najaf. Now, those cities are all virtually encircled by U.S. forces and Allied forces, British forces at this point. So again, that will, as more troops pour into this theater of operation, that will almost certainly free up the new troops, or at least the existing troops, to be reinforced. And then you will see, I strongly suspect, a big focus on Baghdad in the coming days and weeks. Anderson?
Walter, obviously, I'm sure the troops you're with have heard about the suicide bombing attack on Saturday. Don't know if they've heard about this latest incident, the shooting at a checkpoint. Has the mood changed among them? Has the sense of what the kind of things they're going to face, has that changed at all?
No, I wouldn't say any of those incidents which you mentioned affect the 7th Cavalry, the unit with which I'm attached and embedded at this point. The reason being, they're extraordinarily well trained. They have one focus. They know their focus is to get to Baghdad, and that's not just true of the 7th Cavalry. It's true of more than a few of the Army troops in this particular theater of operations. They are totally committed to regime change, which is, of course, the goal of the Bush administration. They want a regime change. They want to throw the Ba'athist Party out, and they want to get this war over with as quickly as possible. They're prepared for a very stiff fight if that's what it's going to take, but they are encouraged by reports they're hearing from their intelligence sources, which say some of the crack Iraqi troops, the Medina division, has now been so heavily degraded by Air Force and Navy bombing that its effectiveness may be reduced anywhere from 45 to 70%. That being the case, again, there's no morale problem whatsoever here. One interesting thing, of course, is that increasingly as this unit draws closer to Baghdad, and as I say, for about 3 days we've been within 50 miles of the south suburbs of Baghdad, the soldiers are relying increasingly on their good luck charms and avoiding anything which they might perceive as bad luck. Anderson?
All right, well, Rogers, thanks. I hope you have a good luck charm as well. Good luck to you. We'll check in with you shortly. Let's go to Chris Plant now at the Pentagon for an update on a plane mishap aboard the USS Constellation. Chris, what happened?
Hi, Anderson. It was an S-3 Viking, an in-flight refueling aircraft flying from the aircraft carrier USS Constellation. It was the last plane to come back to the aircraft carrier at the end of flight operations at the end of the day. It made a safe landing, caught the cable on the deck as it's supposed to do, and then instead of turning right to go over and park where it would normally park, it for some reason veered to the left and went off the left side of the ship. Apparently a brake problem or some sort of a mechanical problem. At this point, there's no indication that it was pilot error. It snagged as it was going over the side of the ship on safety netting, which is set up along both sides of the flight deck. Gave the two pilots enough time to eject. They punched out, found themselves in the water, and as is usually the case during flight operations, an SH-60, the helicopter you see on the deck of the aircraft carrier there, was airborne, flying alongside the ship just in case something happened and they have to go into the water. We see the swimmer there with his snorkel and mask on the deck. He jumps out of the helicopter and goes into the water and picks the two crew members up and brings them back aboard the helicopter. Now, normally when you find crew members that have punched out of an aircraft, they're stunned, they're dazed, they're confused, and sometimes they even fight the swimmer in the water. So these swimmers are trained to basically subdue the swimmers. This swimmer found himself a little bit of an unusual circumstance when he reached the pilots there in the water.
Saw the wreckage and hovered over the wreckage, and we looked for the survivors. First, we did not see any survivors, and then we saw 2 survivors. Pastor Diaz was our hoist operator in the back. He saw the 2 survivors, and about the same time, one of them came up on the radio and told us that he was right behind us.
So there you have it. It was the first fixed-wing airplane lost in this conflict. A number of helicopters have gone down, largely in accidents, but this was the first fixed-wing crash. 2 pilots okay. The plane is a loss, but could have been worse. Anderson?
Yeah, it certainly could have, Chris. And looking at those pictures, I'm reminded we've got word today out of Nasiriyah that apparently on last Tuesday, 4 Marines were killed when their tank, apparently the pilot of the tank was shot. The tank then fell over a bridge crossing over the Euphrates, and the 3 others on board actually drowned, which is just a horrible thing. And it just jogged my memory of that, looking at those pictures of luckily the pilot there being rescued. Chris Plante at the Pentagon, thanks very much. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to have a report by Mike Betcher, who's embedded with U.S. Special Forces, a look at psychological operations, PSYOPs. We'll be right back.
What about Paris?
Why not the Caribbean?
How can planning your next trip be even better?
Mexico?
Knowing your trip could be free.
Hawaii!
Yay!
Call now to request the City Advantage World MasterCard, and you can earn free award travel plus get 8,000 bonus miles. And you can use your miles to fly on over 25 top airlines. You'll earn 1 mile for every dollar you spend on everyday purchases and on special purchases too. Call to request your card and 8,000 bonus miles. Plus, now your miles never expire as long as you make a purchase with your card at least once every 3 years. Soon, you'll be on the trip you planned. Use your miles to fly on over 25 top airlines, stay at the finest hotels worldwide, and drive with any major car rental company free. Call now to request your City Advantage World MasterCard and 8,000 bonus miles. And your next trip to almost anywhere could be free.
Because things are changing so fast, trust CNN. With more frontline reporters, experts who have been there, and the most experienced journalists. Because you need all the facts. Stay with CNN, the most trusted name in news.
The sights and sounds of war. Here are the latest battlefield casualty numbers from U.S. and British officials. 68 coalition troops have died in Operation Iraqi Freedom. 35 Americans were killed in combat, 8 by friendly fire or in accidents. 5 British troops were killed by hostile fire, 18 outside of combat. The cause of 2 deaths are still in question. Iraqi officials, for their part, are not divulging figures on military casualties, but they say 420 civilians have been killed and about 4,000 injured. U.S. Central Command says more than 4,000 Iraqis have been captured. 7 Americans are still being held prisoner of war by Iraq. They've apparently, according to the latest reports, not yet been able to be visited by International Red Cross officials. And at least 16 Americans are missing in action. Let's go to Darren Kagan in Kuwait. Darren?
Yeah, we're going to check in on Voorhees, New Jersey now. There was a twilight rally there for the troops. Hundreds gathered for a vigil to support American troops in Iraq, including captured U.S. Army Sergeant James Riley. Sergeant Riley's parents joined veterans from previous wars for the event. Riley is one of 5 Americans captured last week when Iraqi forces attacked a convoy around Nasiriyah. During the rally, the veterans read the names of each American soldier missing or captured in Iraq. Coalition forces are using various strategies to undermine Iraqi troop resistance. One strategy is called PSYOPs, that stands for Psychological Operations. U.S. Special Forces invited CNN correspondent Mike Betcher to go along. They went to a night mission around Basra, and here you're going to get a look at how they put the PSYOP strategy to work.
When the sun sets over Basra,
and the temperature cools. The war heats up. Or does it? U.S. Special Operations Forces consider themselves a force multiplier, and tonight they will literally be. Their strategy: add one Special Operations Humvee with a loudspeaker mounted on top to one British tank and 4 armored vehicles, and suddenly this tiny force sounds like an invading division. It is called psychological operations, or PSYOPs, part of the U.S. Special Forces repertoire. Their speaker blares the music of disinformation and confusion, broadcast at ear-splitting decibels. The audio tape of recorded tank sounds plays for more than an hour, a show meant for the ears of Iraqi forces in Basra, a short distance away. Adding to the realism, flares are fired to illuminate Iraqi positions. British tanks fire occasional rounds at Iraqi targets. The man orchestrating the racket, a 50-year-old Special Operations veteran who calls this war his last rodeo, turns the speaker in several directions to add to the illusion of a massive frontal attack. Occasionally, Iraqi combatants fire back with mortars, machine guns, and artillery. The coalition hopes this grand deception will force the Iraqis to move troops where they don't need to be moved. Make them look where they don't need to look. Around Basra, the battlefield has become a true twilight zone, where fact and fiction are indistinguishable in the inky blackness of a moonless night. Mike Betcher, CNN, with U.S. Special Operations Forces on the outskirts of Basra.
You don't drive a Model T, and you certainly don't use one of these to make a phone call. Then why sleep on an old-fashioned bed? Call now and learn how you can sleep on the bed designed for the 21st century. The Tempur-Pedic Swedish Sleep System. The only mattress that uses the gravity-defying Tempur material originally developed by NASA.
It feels like it's actually forming its own glove to me.
I can't really find an uncomfortable position.
It's like nothing I've ever felt before in a mattress.
We'll send you this free video, information kit, and free sample of the revolutionary Tempur material. Instead of uncomfortable metal springs, the Tempur-Pedic mattress uses billions of viscoelastic memory cells. This soft yet supportive material automatically adjusts to every curve of your body. Don't be fooled by imitators. Only the Tempur-Pedic mattress uses the revolutionary Tempur material originally developed by NASA. Call now and we'll rush you this video and information kit.
There's still a lot to cover in the next half hour or so. For the latest from Washington, we want to go to our own Chris Burns, who is live. Chris, what's the perspective from there?
Well, Anderson, President Bush battling the information campaign while the war rages on the ground. The president chose as his backdrop on Monday a visit to the Coast Guard in Philadelphia, where the president was sort of counterattacking critics who asked, why is the war not going to plan, and why are the Iraqis not rising up against the Iraqi military and against Saddam Hussein? The president contending that there is steady progress in the war, repeatedly in practically the same breath saying that in 11 days that the war has made a lot of progress, seizing oil installations, stopping missile attacks, and moving ahead toward Baghdad. The president also making the argument that to the Iraqi people, which was, by the way, translated into Arabic and broadcast on radio to the Iraqis, that the nightmare that they've faced for decades will soon be over.
It is understandable that fear and distrust run deep. Yet here in the city, where America itself gained freedom, I give this pledge to the citizens of Iraq. We are coming with a mighty force to end the reign of your oppressors. We are coming to bring you food and medicine and a better life. And we are coming, and we will not stop, we will not relent, until your country is free.
Another obvious concern the White House has is, will Turkey send troops into northern Iraq to try to stabilize it, prevent the Kurds from perhaps seizing oil installations in the north? You're seeing U.S. troops beginning to be deployed there. Secretary of State Colin Powell making a quick trip today to Turkey and then on to the European Union. First to Turkey, however, very important for the U.S. to make the point to the Turkish government that things will remain stable even if the Turks do not send troops down into northern Iraq. Here's Powell.
I want to reassure Turkish leaders that we believe that the work we are doing there now should make it unnecessary for them to consider any incursions in the region, but at the same time to hear their point of view and make sure that we have a common understanding.
Secretary of State going on to Europe after that to talk to the Europeans to reassure them about the U.S.-led campaign, but also looking ahead after Saddam, trying to gain European support in rebuilding Iraq. Anderson.
All right, Chris Burns in Washington, thanks very much. When we come back, Kelly Arena has a story. We've been following so much the suicide attacks overseas in Najaf, as well as in Netanya, Israel over the weekend. Will those attacks happen here? We'll be right back.
Experience the power. It's the new sound of worship. Presenting Worship Together on 2 CDs or cassettes for just $19.99. But wait, call with your credit card and we'll cut the price in half. That's right. You get 2 albums for just $9.99.
I can only imagine.
Then audition other Worship Together albums. Satisfaction guaranteed. So call now and get 2 powerful albums for just $9.99.
Use your credit card and call 1-800-961-9779 to order Worship Together for just $9.99 plus shipping, or send $19.99 plus shipping to the address on your screen, or go to timelife.com.
Welcome back here to Kuwait City. From here in the war zone all the way to U.S. soil, there are big concerns about the deadly suicide bombing in Najaf on Saturday, and if it could happen somewhere in the U.S. Our Kelly Arena reports if there's anything that can be done to prevent such an attack.
U.S. officials say the suicide car bombing that killed 4 U.S. soldiers in Iraq underscores the threat of a similar bombing on American soil. Terrence Gaynor is responsible for protecting the U.S. Capitol.
Just watching what's going on in Iraq, how they've attacked our troops, lend some credence to the fact of what al-Qaeda or other terrorists can do to us.
Suicide bombing is not a new threat, but as the war with Iraq intensifies, so does the concern.
The Al Jazeera network and other Arab television have been highlighting civilian casualties in Baghdad, Iraqi civilians who have been killed, and it is generating high emotions in the Middle East.
The FBI has warned state and local law enforcement about the threat, and all agree it's nearly impossible to defend against.
We've instructed all our officers in the risk of this. We've put out bulletins to how to try to identify some of the characteristics of a suicide bomber and how to respond to that.
Other steps include increased security perimeters around possible targets, more random searches of vehicles going into building garages and over bridges, and perhaps most important, officials are urging public vigilance.
I think here's where the public's awareness, the public's alertness, its sensitivity to its own surroundings could be of assistance.
But as evidenced this past weekend in Israel, even the most alert society will fall prey to suicide bombers.
That's because they typically act alone. There is usually no advance intelligence, no warning, and a very high success rate. Kelly Arena, CNN, Washington. Coming up, we're going to check the latest developments from here in Kuwait City. Also more from Anderson back in Atlanta. Right now, though, a quick break.
If you were born between 1918 and 1963, call the number on your screen now to find out more about the Silver Care Plan. The average funeral now costs over $6,000. But did you know your survivors may only be able to receive government death benefits up to $300 if they qualify? The Silver Care Plan is a way to help protect your loved ones. To get free information about the plan, just call the number on your screen.
CNN Tonight, a founding member of the Delta Force Commandos, plus the latest from the front lines in Iraq on Larry King Live. CNN Tonight, 9 Eastern.
Tablespoons underway now for 1990.
What is that?
Next time, try locks and limits. Control what your kids watch with a touch of a button. DirecTV. Happy watching.
8 years ago, we were looking for animals to raise on our farm, and we found alpacas. We learned that they were gentle, inquisitive, easy to take care of, and amazingly lovable animals. Best of all, it provided us with a lifestyle where we could be together and spend our days with an animal that is truly, truly remarkable.
To locate an alpaca farm near you, go to alpacainfo.com or call 1-800-213-9522.
CNN, the most trusted name in news.
We're at the bottom of the hour. Let's go ahead and check the latest developments. A Bradley fighting vehicle opened fire on a Toyota four-wheel drive van when it failed to stop at a U.S. military checkpoint near Najaf. At least 7 Iraqi women and children were killed. Central Command says a warning shot was fired. The incident occurred near where a suicide bomber killed 4 soldiers Saturday at a checkpoint. Central Command says that today's encounter was tragic, but the U.S. troops did the right thing. Reuters reports another deadly checkpoint shooting took place just hours later, this one near the southern town of Shatra. U.S. Marines say they killed an unarmed Iraqi man who was speeding in a pickup truck toward a checkpoint. A passenger in the truck was badly wounded. 4 U.S. Marines who had been listed as missing are now confirmed killed in action. Central Command says their M101 Abrams tank went off of a bridge in Nasiriyah last Tuesday when its driver was shot. The other 3 crewmen drowned. The tank and the crew were recovered from the Euphrates River on Sunday. 2 Navy airmen were plucked safely from the Persian Gulf when their S-3 Viking refueling aircraft went over the side of the USS Constellation. The plane was landing when it suddenly veered off the edge of the flight deck. The crew ejected and was picked up moments later by a rescue helicopter. U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell goes to Ankara, Turkey this week. It is one of a series of trips that he says will focus on rebuilding Iraq after the war. Powell will also meet this week with NATO allies in Brussels. Japan is keeping a wary eye on North Korea with the help of 2 new satellites that watch out for ballistic missiles. Early today, North Korea tested a short-range anti-ship missile. Japan's defense agency concluded the missile was not ballistic and did not pose a risk to Japan. In other news, Hong Kong health officials say they're making headway in fighting the deadly pneumonia-like virus that is known as severe acute respiratory syndrome, or SARS. The World Health Organization says the virus has killed 15 people and has infected more than 1,600 others in several countries, including the U.S. Hong Kong has been the hardest hit. We're bringing you various angles on the war in Iraq. Coming up this hour, fear of suicide bombers. Did that play a part in the deadly shooting of Iraqi women and children at a U.S. manned checkpoint? We're going to look at the facts in that situation. Also, the heat is on. We'll discuss keeping the troops cool despite heavy gear and chemical protection suits. And the game goes on as the baseball season opens. We're going to look at the history of America's favorite pastime during wartime. Good afternoon from here in Kuwait City. It is Tuesday, April 1st. I'm Darren Kagan.
And good morning from CNN's global headquarters in Atlanta. I'm Anderson Cooper. This is day 13 of the war in Iraq. You are, of course, looking at a live picture of Baghdad, where it is 1:30 in the afternoon. 1:35 in the afternoon, I should say. 4:35 here on the east coast of the United States. As we move to this live picture, let's give you a visual sense of where coalition forces are in Iraq right now, as close as we can tell you. As we put the map into motion, you'll see coalition ground forces are about 50 miles south of Baghdad, probing those Iraqi Republican Guard forces. Throughout that area, Iraqi Republican Guard units being pounded by coalition air attacks as well. And in the north, Iraqi forces are also being hit by airstrikes. That's while key ground battles, I should say, are still underway in cities throughout Iraq, in particular Najaf and Nasiriyah. As we told you, a tragic shooting at a checkpoint is among the major developments today in the war in Iraq. Our Renee San Miguel has a summary.
10:43 a.m. Iraqi TV shows video of Saddam Hussein and his two sons. The state-run network says the pictures are new today, but there has been no independent verification of this. 2:32 p.m.
There was an explosion in Tehran.
CNN's Shirzad Bozergamir reports that a car bomb exploded near a gate at the British Embassy in Tehran. So far, no group has claimed responsibility. 2:46 p.m. Speaking at a Coast Guard installation, President Bush said by acting today in Iraq, the U.S. is saving countless lives in the future. 4:39 p.m. According to Centcom, U.S. troops fired today at a van carrying 13 women and children when the van failed to stop at a checkpoint. The Pentagon later stated that the troops were operating under the rules of engagement in place to protect troops against car bombs. 6:20 p.m.
A busy day for the 101st Airborne.
Ryan Chilcote reports that soldiers of the 101st Airborne seized an airfield about 100 miles south of Baghdad without a fight and without casualties. The U.S. military says it would like to use the airstrip to begin moving in humanitarian aid.
Well, it is the middle of the night or early morning back in the U.S. The day is well underway here in the Persian Gulf area. Let's get the latest on today's military update. And Tom Mantier is at Central Command headquarters in Doha, Qatar. Tom, hello.
Hello, Darren. In about an hour and a half, we expect to hear from Centcom officials, and topping the agenda will be an incident occurred last night at a checkpoint where a car loaded with civilians approached the checkpoint, failed to stop. Warning shots were reportedly fired by, according to Centcom officials. The vehicle still did not stop. They tried to disable it and then apparently fired into the vehicle. And the end result was a total of 7 people dead, women and children. This incident may cause some changes in procedure, but those procedures were already changed after last weekend's suicide bombing where a car approached the checkpoint and was detonated. There are going to be leaflets prepared, according to Centcom, that will be dropped over Iraq, encouraging people not to be pushed forward by the paramilitaries or the Iraqi regime to be used against the coalition forces. These leaflets are probably in the process of being produced right now and will be dropped soon. Within a couple of hours of the incident taking place, we did hear from Jim Wilkinson, who is the Director of Strategic Communications for Centcom, calling this a very tragic incident involving the civilians.
This is a sad and tragic incident, and it is really terrible that innocent people have died. I will point out that this is a byproduct. The new security measures we've had to put in place are a byproduct of the regime's tactics of terrorism. They have now called for terrorist attacks both in the United States and the United Kingdom. They continue to, as the report said just before, they continue to attack their own citizens who try to flee. And so it's a sad and tragic incident. But it's unfortunate that it had to happen. But all such incidents like this are the fault of the regime.
There have been reports in the last couple of days of paramilitaries pushing women and children across a bridge and shooting one woman in the back. She reportedly was pushed over the bridge and, according to Centcom officials, was rescued by an American soldier who then treated her, and she's now not on the battlefield but is being treated and still alive. There were reports yesterday they weren't sure whether she was going to live or not, but she is still alive today. But again, putting the blame squarely on the regime, saying that people are being used, that there is a danger of remote-controlled explosive devices being used at these checkpoints, that it's something they're very concerned about. Darren?
Tom Mantier in Doha. I expect we'll hear even more about that when from Central Command. 7 a.m. Eastern. You heard Tom mention it's the next live Centcom briefing. You'll see it live right here on CNN. For now, back to Anderson.
Thanks, Darren. There are some 250,000 U.S. troops already carrying out Operation Iraqi Freedom, but that number is on the rise. We get more on that from CNN Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr.
70,000 additional combat troops are now beginning to arrive in the region. The Pentagon says it was always part of the war plan, but as the war may now go longer than first expected, the additional firepower is vital.
It will be exactly based upon what's required on the ground. If, in fact, they're required to maneuver and be part of the combat fight, that's what they'll do.
Already arriving 20,000 troops of the 4th Infantry Division. After weeks of waiting offshore Turkey for permission to land and open a northern front, 30 ships full of the division's tanks, vehicles, and artillery are in Kuwait. Troops now arriving on site, and they will be moving into Iraq for possible combat. Additional so-called follow-on forces also are being sent, all part of the plan, though quick victory might have kept them home. General Tommy Franks says there is no last-minute reinforcement.
You see, one says begin here and then ask for more if necessary. The other course says begin to flow this amount of force and we'll stop it when it's no longer necessary. We're in the case of the latter rather than being in the case of the former.
The 1st Cavalry Division sending 17,000 troops, one of the Army's premier heavy armored divisions. Hundreds of tanks, armored vehicles, artillery guns, and Apache helicopters will be able to move quickly on the battlefield to where they are needed. The 1st Armored Division, another 17,000 troops, also providing tanks, Bradley fighting vehicles, artillery, and helicopters. The 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment, 5,200 troops, tanks, and Bradley fighting vehicles. And the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment with 3,500 troops, mainly equipped with armored Humvees for reconnaissance patrols and security checkpoints. The troops and the weapons will be in place within the next 2 months. If the war is over by then, they will become peacekeepers. If not, they will fight the final battles. Barbara Starr, CNN, The Pentagon.
We've been talking a lot about the variety of enemies the coalition forces now face on the battlefield. One enemy we have not discussed very much, and one that is going to play a more important role by week's end, is the heat. Barbara Starr will have more on that when we come back.
What about Paris?
Why not the Caribbean?
How can planning your next trip be even better?
Mexico?
Knowing your trip could be free.
Hawaii!
Yay! Call now to request the City Advantage World MasterCard, and you can earn free award travel plus get 8,000 bonus miles. And you can use your miles to fly on over 25 top airlines. You'll earn 1 mile for every dollar you spend on everyday purchases and on special purchases too. Call to request your card and 8,000 bonus miles. Plus, now your miles never expire as long as you make a purchase with your card at least once every 3 years. Soon, you'll be on the trip you plan. Use your miles to fly on over 25 top airlines, stay at the finest hotels worldwide, and drive with any major car rental company free. Call now to request your City Advantage World MasterCard and 8,000 bonus miles. And your next trip to almost anywhere could be free.
After several days of fighting, British forces say they are making progress in Basra. Our Christian Amanpour has the latest from that front.
The main focus for British forces in southern Iraq is still Basra. They still are trying to neutralize Iraqi resistance inside that city and wear down the level of political control that still exists there. To that end, the British are consolidating positions on the west that they've held for now nearly 2 weeks, and also on the southeast. There has been a battle going on there for the last 48 or so hours. British commandos there having taken on Iraqi infantry and tanks, and they say now they have basically taken that part of the southeast of Basra. But they report overnight 2 seersucker missiles fired from Iraqi positions somewhere in that area towards a British commando base and indeed near the British-held prisoner of war camp near Qasr. We're told that there were no damage, no casualties from those seersucker missiles that were fired, but indeed the high priority for the British now is to try to identify the launch sites and take them out. Of course, the seersucker missile is the same that hit the Kuwaiti Mall in Kuwait City some days ago, and they are surface-to-ship missiles. Again, launch sites of those missiles are high priority for the British to find. In addition, trying to extend their influence, their trust, their confidence to the people of Basra, they're now trying to send out psychological message, psyops messages, including freedom from fear. That is the latest message they're trying to put into Basra, and they're also trying to take out as much humanitarian aid, food, water, foot patrols, all these sort of confidence building measures they're trying to put in to the towns that they've already secured south of Basra. I'm Christiana Monpour, CNN in the British sector in southern Iraq.
Well, for many of us, I think watching this war on television, it is hard to imagine what it is like being on the ground, fighting on the ground. There are so many enemies to face: irregular forces, paramilitary forces, militias, and troops on the battlefield may also have to battle the heat very soon. Temperatures in Iraq are expected to soar as the summer season moves in. Our Renee San Miguel looks at the situation.
Joining us from Chicago is our military analyst, retired Army General David Grange. And General, even without the factor of protection suits, wearing chemical protection suits, carrying around an 80 or 100-pound backpack and a weapon can be tough enough without having to do it in temperatures in the 90s.
Yeah, let's put that in perspective a little bit, Renee. First of all, some of the rucksacks, and that term is a backpack in civilian talk, rucksack in the American military, a Bergen in the British military. That's the slang words for a backpack. They can weigh 100 pounds if, let's say, someone's carrying a radio and batteries, or he's an anti-tank gunner. It depends on what your position is, but they weigh between 60 and 100 pounds. Now, that doesn't mean that soldier Marine carries that pack all the time in a fight. That's a sustainability pack. A lot of times they'll dump that rucksack in a fight, and they just have what they call an assault pack, a smaller pack on their body, or a camelback watering system, or their canteens, ammunition, maybe one ration of food, their medical kit, but they're much lighter in the fight. If they're in a mechanized unit, an armored unit, like in a Bradley fighting vehicle, they just run out of the back of that. They don't even carry that pack. So again, it depends on what their position is and what kind of unit they're a member of.
And even when you add the chemical protection suits, there are different levels of chemical protection that would add or take away from a soldier's discomfort, right?
Exactly. It's MOP. They call it MOP level, a protection level, from 0 all the way up to 4. And 0 is just wearing a chemical suit, which a lot of these military units in the coalition forces train with all the time. If they're in a a National Training Center in Fort Irwin, California, temperatures close to 100 degrees easily in some of the training rotations. If they're Marines in 29 Palms, California, same thing. So they only wear what's necessary unless the threat level goes up. And if it goes up all the way to a level 4, it's with the gloves, the boots, the mask, and the suit. So it's all regulated according to intelligence they pick up on a battlefield.
And you were just mentioning training areas in California deserts. So how do you train for something like this, making sure that the soldiers are hydrated, for example, or maybe engaging in nighttime training in the desert?
Yes, that's exactly right. I mean, these forces are used to training in hot weather as well as cold weather. I just think back at times when it was over 100 degrees and miserable, but these forces can still operate. The commanders, the sergeants, they just have to make sure that troops hydrate, that there's rest periods, that they maybe work more at night than day, but they can handle this type of operations in the heat. I don't think it should be that big of a worry.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. General Grange, thank you for your time as always. We do appreciate it.
Well, let's hope it won't be that big of a worry. Darren, I know over the last couple of days you've been interviewing some of the new troops who have been arriving and sort of talking to them as they first set foot in Kuwait. Are they surprised by the heat? Do they seem able to handle it?
Actually, I think what people have been surprised from here in Kuwait, especially in Kuwait City, it's actually cooler than it's supposed to be. Some of the locals telling me it's about 10 to 15 degrees cooler than it would be this time of year. You can see behind me not just the Kuwait Towers, but the Bay of Kuwait is right there. So that does keep things a lot cooler here than farther north into Iraq and farther into the desert. So we've actually been lucky so far with the weather, but I can just tell you in the last couple of days I have noticed a difference. I've lost the jacket. I mean, I haven't lost it, but I haven't been wearing it about here, even though we come to you in the early morning hours here in Kuwait. So far a break, but definitely things are getting warmer in this part of the world.
All right, good to know. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back.
I think we're going to, yeah, let's do that.
All right, we'll be back in a minute.
You don't drive a Model T, and you certainly don't use one of these to make a phone call. Then why sleep on an old-fashioned bed? Call now and learn how you can sleep on the bed designed for the 21st century. The Tempur-Pedic Swedish Sleep System, the only mattress that uses the gravity-defying Tempur material originally developed by NASA.
It feels like it's actually forming its own glove to me.
I can't really find an uncomfortable position.
It's like nothing I've ever felt before in a mattress.
We'll send you this free video, information kit, and free sample of the revolutionary Tempur material. Instead of uncomfortable metal springs, the Tempur-Pedic mattress uses billions of viscoelastic memory cells. This soft yet supportive material automatically adjusts to every curve of your body. Don't be fooled by imitators. Only the Tempur-Pedic mattress uses the revolutionary Tempur material originally developed by NASA. Call now and we'll rush you this video and information kit.
Children watching the war. Landmines are, of course, a major danger, not just for children, but for everyone, especially coalition forces in Iraq. And as CNN's Kevin Seitz reports from northern Iraq, landmines are a hazard to the local Kurds who are just trying to eke out a living.
Salam Mohammed's two nephews were killed by landmines, so when the British-based Mine Advisory Group, or MAG, started demining operations near his home in northern Iraq 10 years ago, he joined up. Now he's their operations manager. MAG employs 700 Kurdish deminers here. Most face death daily for a modest $300 a month paycheck. Who's going to do this kind of job?
Those people, we are working this job for the sake of our people and our country.
MAG estimates there are 10 to 12 million landmines in northern Iraq alone, second only to Afghanistan. One of their major concerns now is the road heading west to Kirkuk. When the Iraqis retreated from this area back towards Kirkuk, they planted dozens of anti-tank mines in holes like this. Most have about 1.6 kilograms of high explosives, enough explosive power that when detonated, it can destroy your standard sports utility vehicle. And while the Iraqis may have planted the mines to slow a possible advance of coalition ground forces, Mohammed says they also have a pattern of using mines to keep Kurds from returning to their homes abandoned during the Iraqi occupation. MAG estimates as many as 10,000 have been killed and wounded by landmines here from 1992 to 2000.
Yeah, since 1992, we are liberated this part of the region, and still people to date are killed and injured by mines. So people, they're calling them the hidden soldiers.
These boys have just scavenged for firewood on a minefield. That hole they hit in the road recently held an anti-tank mine MAG removed. They know the dangers here, even have leaflets about the mines, but they say their families have no wood to cook with. The boy named Hazar, which in Kurdish means poor, tells me why I'll never understand.
So in your country, the life is different, and you've got everything, so you're not risking your life.
And while MAG is making progress, the number of mines vastly outnumber the workers here, and clearing a mine is a slow process as well as costly. But they know the price of not doing it right is even higher. Kevin Seitz, CNN, Chamchamal, Northern Iraq.
We'll be right back after this short break.
being held prisoner by Saddam, now he claims Iraqi citizens who welcome coalition forces are threatened with death. Meet the one-time head of Hussein's nuclear program. American Morning with Paul Azan, today 7 Eastern.
The war in Iraq continues, and no one takes you closer than CNN, live throughout the day. Stay with CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Tablespoons underway now for 1990.
What is that?
Next time, try locks and limits. Control what your kids watch with a touch of a button. DirecTV. Happy watching.
8 years ago, we were looking for animals to raise on our farm, and we found alpacas. We learned that they were gentle, inquisitive, easy to take care of, and amazingly lovable animals. Best of all, it provided us with a lifestyle where we could be together and spend our days with an animal that is truly, truly remarkable.
To locate an alpaca farm near you, go to alpacainfo.com or call 1-800-213-9522.
CNN, the most trusted name in news.
With so much of our attention focused on Iraq, it is hard to believe, but it is that time of year. Baseball season has actually gotten underway. But as our Jeff Greenfield reports, world events cast a shadow over the field this year.
They're the typical signs of the season. Getting the body in shape, getting the place in shape. And in a seasonal business, when the customers start coming back, you want them to feel at home.
So what do we learn from these very ordinary sights? That it is spring, despite the weather, that summer is coming, that a familiar friend is back. Nothing more, but nothing less.
It's not that the world beyond the field is all that far away. Just coming into the ballpark reminds you of that. So do the opening ceremonies.
On this opening day, we pray for the safe and speedy return of our armed forces, brave men and women who answer the call to duty.
But of course they played ball today, just as they did all through the Second World War. As the classic documentary When It Was a Game reminds us, FDR himself told them to keep on playing.
I think it's embedded. There's never any idea that you're going to stop baseball.
New Yorker writer Roger Angell, who's been following the game since the 1920s, says that baseball can ease the anxiety.
Today we can put that aside for a little while, and maybe that's what baseball's for.
Radio sports talk show host Mike Francesa.
If 50,000 people come here today and for 3 hours forget about the world, that's the best tonic that we could have in this country.
The fans think so too.
Oh, it's spring, it's renewal, and you just pray for the boys and try to get away from it for a few hours.
It takes your mind off it, gives you some relief for a couple hours.
For Mets third baseman Jay Bell, the pull of the outside world is very real. His dad was a career enlisted man, and
got a brother-in-law that's in the Marine Corps, flies Cobras, and he's heading over in a couple of days.
But once the game starts,
you could separate the two. You know, whenever you come out here, certainly it's all about baseball and all about enjoyment.
Not that there was much to enjoy for the Mets fans today. Their new high-priced pitcher got clobbered. The fielders couldn't field. The Cubs beat them 15-2. They've got 161 more chances to win.
For generations, writers and intellectuals have pulled muscles trying to inflate baseball into a metaphor for war, for life, for the universe. But in fact, baseball is a diversion. It is a pastime. It is a game. And this year, this spring, that's exactly the point. Jeff Greenfield, CNN at Shea Stadium in New York.
Good morning, I'm Bill Hemmer, live in Kuwait City on this Tuesday. A couple of incidents at U.S. military checkpoints in Iraq top the news at this hour. Central Command says U.S. troops did the right thing in firing on a vehicle that would not stop near the town of Najaf. Tragically, at least 7 Iraqi women and children inside the vehicle were killed. U.S. military officials blamed the recent Iraqi suicide bombing for forcing American troops to shoot and kill in such situations as those in Najaf. Reuters reporting that an Iraqi man was shot and killed today by U.S. Marines near Shatra. The unarmed man apparently was speeding in a pickup truck along a highway when he drove through barbed wire at a roadblock. One of the Marines who fired at the vehicle said he thought it was a suicide bomber. A passenger in the truck was badly wounded. A missing M1A1 Abrams tank recovered Sunday from the Euphrates River near Nasiriyah. Crew of 4 all dead. U.S. military officials say the tank driver was shot while driving across a bridge on Tuesday. The tank then plunged into the river, drowning the rest of the crew. 2 Navy pilots rescued today when their jet fell overboard after landing on the USS Constellation.
Wounds. More than a week ago, her unit was ambushed by Iraqis near Nasiriyah. U.S. Marines in Nasiriyah also played a role in the Lynch rescue mission. They staged a battle as a diversion while she was rescued. Now the Marines are on an aggressive block-by-block offensive inside that city. They're looking for Iraqi paramilitary forces. Targets in Baghdad were pounded again from above, even as U.S. ground forces advanced on the capital from below. We have reports that U.S. forces are now within the so-called red zone, ringing the capital. According to Michael Gordon of the New York Times, the Marines' 1st Division has now crossed the Tigris River, and the Army's 3rd Infantry is attacking the Republican Guards north of Karbala. Our Ryan Chilcote reports 2 surface-to-surface missiles have hit very close to U.S. troops in Najaf. He said it appears that no U.S. forces were injured. As a precaution, the troops put on gas masks just in case chemical weapons were involved, but they were not. Secretary of State Colin Powell is in the region. He arrived in Turkey last night. His mission is to try to mend relations which were strained when Turkey refused to allow U.S. troops to invade Iraq from Turkish soil. Powell will hold a news conference about 90 minutes from now at 5:30 a.m. Eastern. CNN will bring that to you live. We are bringing you developments on several fronts in the war on Iraq. Coming up this hour, U.S. forces launch a major ground offensive against Iraq's most elite forces. We'll have a live report from the Pentagon. Plus, we'll take you to the front lines where a missile comes too close for comfort for U.S. troops. They were targeted near the town of Najaf. And the dramatic rescue of a U.S. prisoner of war. We'll have Army Private First Class Jessica Lynch's amazing story. Hello, it is Wednesday, April 2nd from Kuwait City. I'm Darren Kagan.
And good morning from CNN's global headquarters in Atlanta. I'm Anderson Cooper. You are looking at a live picture of Baghdad, where more explosions rocked the city earlier this morning. While farther away, there are reports that the early stages, and we do say the early stages, of what will be the Battle of Baghdad have begun. Here's what we know right now. U.S. Central Command says U.S. forces are fighting Iraqi forces south of Baghdad. They've crossed the Tigris River just north of the city of Kut, which is about 100 miles from Baghdad. There's the map. Some other units are even closer to Iraq's capital city. CNN's senior Pentagon correspondent Jamie McIntyre and other reporters covering the war say the advance on Baghdad will be very systematic.
Well, there's an important development today, which is that, the U.S. military has begun the Battle of Baghdad. It's something that begins maybe a bit slowly, but they've taken the first step by launching an attack on the Republican Guard defenders who are guarding the approaches to the city.
This is not the street-to-street fighting in Baghdad that so many have anticipated. This map helps explain exactly what Gordon is talking about when he says the Battle of Baghdad. The blue arrows represent U.S. troops on the move. The red arrows represent Iraqi Republican Guard divisions that are trying to block the way to Baghdad. But the Pentagon says U.S. forces are weakening the Iraqi divisions to the point that Iraq has had to reinforce them with troops from the north. That's where that red arrow coming down from Tikrit, which is the ancestral homeland of Saddam Hussein. We're going to get an update on this and everything else from Tom Mantier, who is live at Central Command in Doha, Qatar. Tom?
Anderson Central Command has confirmed within the last few minutes that 2 Republican Guard units are engaged and there is heavy fighting reported. This follows the announcement overnight that American POW was rescued in a raid in Nasiriyah at a hospital there, an Iraqi hospital there, where a combined group of forces made a raid after a diversionary fire was launched in another part of the city. They went into this hospital and found 19-year-old PFC Jessica Lynch, who is from West Virginia, and managed to spirit her out. They also recovered 11 unidentified bodies from this hospital, and that's about all that Central Command is saying, that they have recovered 11 sets of remains at the hospital and 1 live POW. Jessica Lynch reportedly shot several times, fairly serious injuries, but she has talked to her parents already after being taken back to the coalition side. The parents say that it's quite possible that they may fly to Germany to meet up with their daughter if indeed she is taken there for treatment. The announcement came in the middle of the night in a bit of a shock. President Bush was notified of this operation and its success at about 5 p.m. Eastern Time last evening in the United States, and his response was, "That's great." Here at Central Command, it was a bit less with emotion than just announcing that the operation indeed had been completed successfully.
Coalition forces have conducted a successful rescue mission of a U.S. Army prisoner of war held captive in Iraq. The soldier has been returned to a coalition-controlled area. More details will be released as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
As soon as possible, maybe later this afternoon. We're expecting in about 3 hours, a little less, a Centcom briefing here at the Coalition Media Center, and maybe at that point there were reportedly pictures of this raid from an Army combat team that had cameras out there, so we'll wait and see if those pictures materialize. But as it stands right now, 19-year-old PFC Jessica Lynch is back safely in coalition hands, was listed as missing, and also 11 sets of remains as yet unidentified were recovered by this team that went in for the rescue of the POW. Anderson?
All right, Tom, thanks very much. We'll check in with you in a little while. Tom Mentir live in Doha, Qatar. Central Command, as Tom mentioned, is scheduled to hold its regular morning news briefing about 3 hours from now, a little under 3 hours. It's 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Of course, as always, you can watch it right here live on CNN. Also, there'll be a live press conference with 3 U.S. servicemen now being treated at the military hospital in Landstuhl, Germany. That we will also attempt to bring to you when it happens. Let's go to Darren Kagan now in Kuwait City. Darren?
All right, Anderson, what do you say we get started on a rotation of embedded reporters checking in with us, beginning with Carl Penhall. He is a reporter with the Army 5 Corps, 11th Attack Helicopter Regiment. He is somewhere in central Iraq, and he joins us right now on the phone. Carl, hello.
Hi, Darren. Yes, the push toward Baghdad is most definitely on. Overnight, the 3rd Infantry Division and earlier this morning, elements of the 11th Aviation Regiment have been fighting up and around the city of Karbala. U.S. commanders here now tell me that the 3rd Infantry Division, parts of that, have pushed through Karbala and are now somewhat north of Karbala. They're being supported on the ground in the air by the Apache attack helicopters as they move forward against possible Republican Guard units, although it's not yet been confirmed whether they are Republican Guard or regular Army units. But certainly the 3rd ID, their tanks and Bradley fighting vehicles, I'm being told, are now maneuvering beyond Karbala and towards the southern outskirts of Baghdad. Commanders here say that the resistance in and around that city was somewhat lighter than initially suspected. That said, they have seen action against the more modern T-72 tanks. U.S. forces have also destroyed artillery emplacements, and they've destroyed armored personnel carriers. In the last few moments, like I say, north of Karbala on the southern approaches toward Baghdad, Apache helicopters and Bradley fighting vehicles have engaged what are being called Iraqi technical vehicles. These are civilian pickups mounted with machine guns. Those have been driving south on a highway to try and engage U.S. forces and have met with a sharp response from the U.S. forces. Some commanders, U.S. commanders here on the ground, are very optimistic of developments at this stage and are saying things are progressing a little quicker than they had initially expected. Darren.
Carl, we want to try to get as many of the embedded reporters in as possible, so I'm going to let you go. We'll check back with you later. Right now, back to Anderson in Atlanta. Anderson.
Darren, thanks very much. We're going to quickly show you a live picture right now. I'm told it's from Kirkuk, apparently showing flames. I know it's a little hard to read at this point. We're apparently, again, just saying it's a live picture, so the camera's moving around a little bit. There are apparently flames somewhere in or around Kirkuk. That, of course, a city in there you go. There you see it on the right-hand side of your screen. Oil-rich city in the north of Iraq, near Kurdish-controlled territory. We're going to go to Reem Brahimi, who is live in Amman, Jordan, to talk about the latest Baghdad bombing. Reem?
Anderson, overnight bombing started quite late compared to the previous days, at about 3 a.m. according to people I spoke to in Baghdad. They said they heard the sound of missiles flying overhead, lots of that. There were also, from what we understand, targeting of the Republican Palace, which is in the center of the city, as well as an Air Force building that's also quite central in a very commercial neighborhood near a theater. That building seems to have been heavily damaged. It's been a building the coalition forces have been pounding at day after day in the past, since the beginning of the war. And now we also spoke to Red Cross officials in Baghdad, Anderson, and they're telling us of what they describe as a horror scene they saw in a hospital in that city called Hilla, which is about an hour's drive south of the Iraqi capital. The doctors from the Red Cross went there and said they saw hundreds of wounded people. It's a small hospital, but clearly overcrowded there with the wounded, mainly women and children. He said the doctors also said that they also saw some corpses that appear to have been brought in the hospital within the past 48 hours, deteriorated, dismembered corpses, a very horrific scene described by the RCRC members, who seem to say that it's the result of a massive raid that occurred there within the past 48 hours. Anderson?
Reem, I know Iraqi officials are very quick to point out civilian casualties. Do they ever release information about military units casualties or paramilitary unit casualties?
It's very difficult to get that from Iraqi officials. Usually the officials that come and brief reporters, be it the information minister or the military spokesman, well, they release civilian figures. Sometimes they will say that they have had some losses here and there, but it's not a regular trend by all means. And they also do something, they also give out a lot of casualties on the other side. They say we've killed so many people, we have inflicted casualties among the American forces, and that's something that they will point out to, but very rarely will we know exactly how many of the Iraqi military or paramilitary forces or militias, even from the ruling Ba'ath Party, have been affected, either wounded or killed. Anderson?
Right. And I suppose that's a number, frankly, we may never know. It's one of those things that might just get lost in the course of the war. Reem Brahimi live in Amman, Jordan. Thanks very much. We're going to take a short break, and actually, we're not going to take a short break. We're going to get my colleague Darren Kagan in Kuwait City. Darren?
We're going to hold off on that break. We want to show our pictures, some pictures to our viewers, Anderson. The first live picture is coming to us from Basra. A lot of smoke in the skies over Basra. The sky has definitely been a story over that southern Iraq city over the last 24 hours. Overnight, there was a huge flare show put up over that city by the British, working on surrounding that town. It is the second largest city in all of Iraq, 1.3 million residents. The British are on the southern and working on being on the western flank side of Basra. More on that in a moment. First, though, we want to check in northern Iraq, and that's where we find our Brent Sadler. Brent, hello.
Hello, Darren. Well, I'm going to bring you some pictures that we haven't been able to get to you before, live pictures. I'm standing in no man's land in an area that was recently abandoned by the Iraqi forces. And if we can use a special lens we have on the camera, I'm going to take you to my right over here and slowly zoom in. It's pretty hazy today, but you can still get in there on the full zoom, the flare of a wellhead, escaping gases being burnt off on one of those Kirkuk oil fields. Kirkuk city, just over 10 miles from my location here, and the first time we've been able to bring you a live picture via video phone of this key northern city in northern Iraq, very much under the control of Saddam Hussein. On the ground here, I'm being told by Kurdish commanders of Peshmergas that some 25,000 Iraqi forces have well dug in around Kirkuk. We're talking about regular army. They say units of the Republican Guard have recently moved back in to this area to defend the city of Kirkuk, plus irregulars from the Ba'athist Party, the police, and what we've heard a lot about, the Fedayeen Saddam. So a lot of regular army, Republican Guard, and irregulars now well entrenched, I'm told, in a circle around the city. This is as far as we can go right now. There is no fighting between Peshmerga lines and the Iraqi static lines. However, I have heard since getting up here, a tremendous bombardment. I could hear very, very heavy bombardment somewhere on target in this area. Explosions, 2 or 3 explosions coming every second for about 5 or 10 minutes. The heaviest bombardment I certainly have heard in northern Iraq since being up here since the start of the invasion. So incredibly strong air attacks in this area, and also reports from Kurdish commanders on the ground that U.S. Special Forces are working in very sensitive areas, very forward positions, and are involved in spotting and laser splashing targets for those continuing and now very heavy U.S. airstrikes. Back to you, Darren.
And Brent, as you show us those pictures far off in the distance of Kirkuk, explain to our viewers the significance of that city and why it would be so important to Saddam Hussein, why he would feel he'd have to defend that.
Well, there are 2 main cities up here, Kirkuk behind me, as I said, and Mosul. And since the start of the air campaign, we know there have been continuous air attacks against those areas. Several days ago, the Iraqis put into effect a tactical retreat to really defend Kirkuk and Mosul. These cities are important because if Saddam were to lose control of, say, Kirkuk, which is the oil capital of this part of Iraq, then it would possibly set off a domino effect amongst those forces that remain loyal to him. So very important for Kirkuk to remain in Saddam Hussein's hands as far as he's concerned. Kirkuk, I must tell you, Darren, is heavily populated by Kurds, and the Kurds who recently were involved in crushing Ansar al-Islam, a terrorist network that was operating in the eastern part of the northern Kurdish enclave. A lot of those Kurds who took part in that fight want to get engaged with a U.S. plan, they hope, to try and defeat the defenders of Kirkuk with Peshmerga forces of Kurdish origin. There's certainly no precise plan on the table, but the Kurds are certainly pushing for that under the umbrella of the Iraqi opposition, to use components of Iraqi forces to liberate those key northern towns. Back to you, Darren.
And you'll be tracking that force from northern Iraq. Brent Sadler, thank you so much. Anderson, back to you.
Darren, thanks very much. Some of the most intense fighting over the last couple of days, at least for U.S. Marines, has been in and around Nasiriyah, and that is where we go right now, where Jason Bellini has arrived. He's with the 15th Marine Expeditionary Unit. Jason, what can you tell us?
Anderson, we arrived real early in the morning. It was about 3 a.m., and the Marines finally got a little bit of shut-eye today, now waking up to a very beautiful day here on the Euphrates River, on the banks of the Euphrates River. No Marines are going out for a swim, though. They're on a state of high alert and continuing operations in this area. That after last night, going in during and after a heavy bombardment of the city that we're quite certain woke up just about everyone who was here. We were watching it from a distance, and the pictures we've sent in, these night vision pictures, were taken from perhaps 2-3 kilometers away, but you can still hear the helicopters, you can still hear the aerial bombardment, the assault from Cobra helicopter gunships and artillery, also hitting Saddam Fedayeen strongholds in this city. They consider it a successful mission, that no Marines were injured in this very large assault, very large pre-planned assault that was conducted in real time with the rescue, the successful rescue of a POW on the other side of on the other side of the river. They purposefully conducted both operations at the same time so that the very loud one, which the Marines were a part, the very loud, very visible one, would, they hoped, take the Fedayeen holding the POW off guard. And it appears that was a successful tactic last night, successful rescue effort by Marine Special Forces as part of a task force that went in by helicopter to make that rescue.
Sorry, Jason, I thought I just lost you there for a moment. I got a question. As you were coming into Nasiriyah, the Marines you were with, and we have heard so much about how fierce the fighting has been there. Some senior Marines telling CNN a couple days ago that it fiercest fighting the Marines have seen since the Vietnam War. Was there a sense of trepidation, a sense of excitement, a sense of a sober sense among the Marines you were with as they knew they were going to go into Nasiriyah?
interesting question. I think in the days before this happened, there was a somber mood, one that I hadn't seen up until this point, because their commander, the captain of Golf Company, warned them that this was going to be a very difficult, very serious mission. They were informed about other events that had happened to their fellow Marines in this city, so they were in the process, they said, of mentally preparing themselves. But I think as we went in, there was a real sense of confidence. I think there was a sense of confidence in their numbers, that by going in with such a large force, they didn't think that that these militia groups would dare to attack them, that would dare to sneak up on them. They certainly maintained high security as we went along. Every time we stopped, a number of Marines getting out, providing security to this convoy as it went in. It turns out that everything, at least as far as the convoy we were part of, went smoothly, went in without encountering resistance. Now they're just concerned about the possibility of more ambush attacks and keeping up their vigilance even, got my mic there, sorry, Anderson, keeping up their vigilance even as, even as you see civilians out walking about, and it seems like a normal, very beautiful day out on the Euphrates River. Anderson?
Yeah, I imagine things can change in a second there. Jason Bellini, appreciate it. Stay safe. We'll talk to you later on. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, Darren Kagan and I are going to try to get an overview of what is going on in the ground. We're hearing heavy action going on. Some saying the battle for Baghdad has begun. We'll have a report on that as you're looking at this live picture of the bridge into Basra. We'll be right back.
There must be 50 ways the aero bed saves the day. Like reason 19, you've got the guest room, but no guest bed. Number 3, your guest bed invites your guest to go away. Relax. Just plug in the aero bed, push the button, and you have a comfortable, adjustable, extra bed in less than 1 minute. The new pump is recessed and is 30% more powerful, with quadra-coil construction for a smoother surface. It's even adjustable with our exclusive one-touch comfort control. And it can hold up to 650 pounds. Plus, it stores away in seconds. And now you can get the new and improved aero bed at the same low price.
Call now to get the aero bed for just 3 easy payments of only $33.
Plus, get this free carry bag and get our 30-night money-back guarantee.
Buy now. That's just 3 payments of $33, or visit a fine retail store near you.
How many ways will you use your aero bed?
You decided. Once again, CNN is #1. For trust and experience, Americans choose CNN as the most credible news source. More than MSNBC or Fox News. More than any network, newspaper, or magazine. CNN is the most trusted name in news. CNN Today, his dramatic story inspired the film Black Hawk Down. Now, as troops advance to Baghdad, Michael Durant recalls what it's like to fight an urban war and his time as a POW on American Morning with Paul Azan. CNN Today, 7 Eastern.
We're going to get an update now of what is going on in the ground, or on the ground in Iraq, as close as we can tell you, from CNN's Chris Plant at the Pentagon. Chris?
Hi, Anderson. A lot of ground activity south of Baghdad tonight. The U.S. Army's 3rd Infantry Division is fighting the Medina Division, which is probably the premier division in the Iraqi military. It is a heavy armored division. It is south and west of the city of Baghdad. This division has been taking a beating from U.S. and British air power over the last several days, focusing on their heavy tanks first, their T-72s, followed by their T-55s, and now the ground offensive has begun against them from the Army's 3rd Infantry Division. To the east of there, around the city of Kut, the Marine Corps' 1st Division is taking them on head-on, also after a number of days of pummeling from the air. But it appears that this is the opening phase of the assault on Baghdad, the battle for Baghdad. It's the end result of what this has all been building to. Again, phase one, they're going to try to take out these key divisions and open the door to the city gates of Baghdad. There, of course, they're going to run into the Special Republican Guard, which is a smaller but very serious military unit operating inside the city. Anderson?
And there had, been a lot of talk in earlier days about this red line, the potential use of chemical or biological weapons as coalition forces near. I assume that must be foremost in the minds of a lot of the troops right now.
It is certainly an area of major concern for everyone involved. U.S. intelligence early on in this conflict apparently intercepted some intelligence, some communications from the Iraqi leadership out to units in the field, advising them that when the coalition forces reach a specific point outside of the city, that they're to use chemical weapons against them. It's not entirely clear where this red line is. We believe it's something of an imaginary red line. It may be different distances from the city in different directions, but there is certainly great concern that at this point chemical weapons may be used. Chemical weapons, of course, probably the primary reason for the U.S. and Britain deciding to go into Iraq in the first place, to disarm Saddam Hussein. And the belief is that once he feels that he's really painted into a corner, that he'll go ahead and use them.
Well, that is the big fear right now. Of course, Chris Bland at the Pentagon, thanks. We'll check in with you later. We have a lot more to cover. Darren Kagan and myself will be back in just a few minutes.
Hey, I'll get this. Besides, I get airline miles. With your business card? Huh.
What is your credit card doing for your small business?
You earn miles on everything you buy? Yeah, from supplies to travel expenses.
The Citi Platinum Select Advantage Business Card. Call now and you could get 1 mile for every $1 you spend. Miles that may never expire. Plus 10,000 bonus miles.
I use my miles for car rentals, hotels, on over 25 top airlines, even a well-earned vacation.
Plus, get benefits like account summaries, business discounts, online fraud protection, and more. Call now to request your card.
I'd like the Citi Advantage Business Card and 10,000 bonus miles.
And soon, your miles could take you almost anywhere.
Oh, Paris is great. And flying free? Makes it even better. Smart business decision.
The Citi Advantage Business Card.
Call now to request your card and 10,000 bonus miles.
As the war in Iraq continues, CNN is there. From the front lines to the home front. Around the world, around the clock. When you need to know, stay with CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Tonight at 7, CNN goes live to the front lines.
Giant wave of steel.
Eyewitness reports. No one gets you closer.
Atlanta, we just heard something shooting.
Join CNN's team tonight at 7 for a special report live from the front lines.
Soldiers with the U.S. Army's 4th Infantry Division still have not seen action in the war in Iraq. That could change, though. Their gear is being unloaded in a different location than was first planned. Our Richard Blystone has that story.
It has been a long wait for the 4th Division soldiers, originally slated to strike from the north through Turkey. Here comes Plan B. The first 5,000 troops of the 4th Division have already flown into Kuwait. When the other 25,000 get here, they'll add 10% to the Allied force in the region, after they've met up with their war machines. Flexibility is the military buzzword of the day, and this equipment has been flexing its way out of the Mediterranean, through the Suez Canal, down the Red Sea, around the Arabian Peninsula, and up here to Kuwait for nearly 2 weeks. This gear is the most modern the U.S. Army has, with digitized battlefield information on display in everything from the general's tent to the corporal's Humvee.
It transforms night into day. It transforms the fog of the battlefield, where you don't know where a friend is or where a foe is, into a level of certainty that enables you to operate decisively and with speed.
It will take a couple of weeks for the 4th to be ready for battle, and its ultimate mission, like the helicopter within the shrink wrap, can be only dimly perceived. Will its relatively fresh troops lead a charge into Baghdad, sweep into northern Iraq, or help mop up the problems to the rear? The general will say only that the 4th could do any of those. The last time this division saw combat, it was also fulfilling a need for more troops. That war was Vietnam. Richard Blystone, CNN, Kuwait.
I want to make you aware of a news conference we're looking forward to in the next hour. It should be with 3 servicemen coming out of Landstuhl, Germany, the military hospital there at the Ramstein Air Base. That at 5 a.m. Eastern. 3 servicemen who have been wounded in this conflict. They'll be holding a news conference. We'll hear from them. You'll see it live right here on CNN. For now, a quick break. We're back after this.
You don't drive a Model T, and you certainly don't use one of these to make a phone call. Then why sleep on an old-fashioned bed? Call now and learn how you can sleep on the bed designed for the 21st century. The Tempur-Pedic Swedish Sleep System, the only mattress that uses the gravity-defying Tempur material originally developed by NASA.
It feels like it's actually forming its own glove to me.
I can't really find an uncomfortable position.
It's like nothing I've ever felt before in a mattress.
We'll send you this free video, information kit, and free sample of the revolutionary Tempur material. Instead of uncomfortable metal springs, the Tempur-Pedic mattress uses billions of viscoelastic memory cells. This soft yet supportive material automatically adjusts to every curve of your body. Don't be fooled by imitators. Only the Tempur-Pedic mattress uses the revolutionary Tempur material originally developed by NASA. Call now and we'll rush you this video and information kit.
Half past the hour, let's get an update right now on the top stories this hour, beginning with a grim discovery at an Iraqi hospital. U.S. Central Command says 11 bodies have been found in the same hospital where prisoner of war Jessica Lynch was rescued. Our Tom Montier says the military is trying to identify those bodies. The family of Jessica Lynch is grateful for the daring rescue mission. The Pentagon says she suffered several gunshot wounds, but she's in stable condition. She and other members of her maintenance unit were ambushed back on March 23rd. Embedded reporters along the front line say the battle for Baghdad appears imminent. While bombs fell over the capital, the 3rd Infantry Division went after the Republican Guard near Karbala. Central Command confirms that Marines took a key bridge across the Tigris River at Kut. That puts U.S. forces within a so-called red zone, the outer defensive ring around Baghdad. 4 missing journalists, including 3 Americans, have arrived safely in Jordan. Newsday reporter Matthew McAllister, photographer Moises Saman had been missing for more than a week. So was freelance photographer Molly Bingham. The group said they were taken by Iraqi authorities last Tuesday and held in a prison. McAllister says they were not physically abused. Navy officials say that engine failure caused an F-14 Tomcat to go down over southwestern Iraq. The fighter was from the USS Kitty Hawk. Both crewmen ejected. They were later rescued. That incident apparently occurred during in-flight refueling. 3 people taken off an American Airlines flight from Japan to California are breathing a bit more easily today. Doctors say they do not have severe acute respiratory syndrome, also known as SARS. The World Health Organization, meanwhile, says that more than 1,800 people in 15 countries have been sickened by the disease, and it has killed more than 60 people worldwide. We are bringing you developments on several fronts in the war on Iraq. Coming up this hour, U.S. forces launch a major ground offensive against Iraq's most elite forces. We'll have a live report from the Pentagon. Plus, we'll take you to the front lines where a missile comes too close for comfort for U.S. troops. They were targeted near the town of Najaf. And the dramatic rescue of a U.S. prisoner of war. We will have Army Private First Class Jessica Lynch's amazing story. It is Wednesday, April 2nd from Kuwait City. I'm Darren Kagan.
And a good morning from CNN's global headquarters in Atlanta. I'm Anderson Cooper. You are looking at a live picture of the bridge from Basra, where there is British forces ringing the city, the focus of a lot of action over the last several weeks. Good morning, Darren. Good morning, everyone. We're going to get an update right now on what is going on at this moment from Tom Montier at Central Command in Doha, Qatar. Tom, what's the latest?
Anderson, the latest is that there are reports of engagements by the coalition on at least 2 fronts of the Republican Guard, and the fighting is reported to be quite heavy. Also overnight, the rescue of a private first class, Jessica Lynch, from a hospital in Iraq, and also during that raid, which was a special operations function, the recovery of 11 bodies or human remains from that hospital. Joining us now, Captain Frank Thorpe, Public Affairs Officer for Central Command. Tell us a little more about this raid. It was obviously planned a bit in advance.
Planned well in advance. We had very good intelligence that Private First Class Lynch was being held as a prisoner in the Saddam Hospital there in Nasiriyah. We planned the raid with special forces who used the cover of darkness to swoop in a helicopter, take control of the area, and remove Private First Class Lynch safely from the area.
We had reports that there were diversionary actions going on in the area of the hospital at the same time.
Tom, one of the good things about an operation like this is there's a lot of deception. There's a lot of information that we don't give out about this operation, which helps us to succeed in the future. And there are reports of that deception, and I'll just let those stand as reports that are out there.
All right. Also, at the same time you were confirming this raid, you were confirming the recovery of 11 sets of remains found in and around the hospital by special forces.
That's exactly right. When we went in, we found 11 bodies in and around the area. We have not yet confirmed that they are Americans who were in the same unit with Private First